One of AA's sobriety secrets was discovered by Bill W. A few months into his recovery, away at a convention, stressed and tempted, he looked into the abyss. Seconds away from getting hammered, back to the certain death his doctors and hospital had only recently consigned him to, he begged his friend, Dr. Bob, "Find me another drunk to talk to." The doctor hurried Bill outside and into the nearest alley, and the rest was history. Bill never drank again and went on to steadily inspire the movement that saved millions more. Turns out that loving and trying to help others like us, with our humility, lessons learned, and new power, lifts us to the mountaintop, far more certainly than we can always or ever rescue them. Goodbye, abyss. Love gives you wings. As for me, I'll never be again allowed to slam shots at Joe's bar. The place would bust out laughing. "Nice movie, dipshit." Plus, how am I going to keep up our research tracking your journey to the promised land if I crash and burn in the ditch? The last word from AA behaviorists, and definitely the man upstairs, is loving each other is our ticket to self-fulfillment. Of course, RR and I are mighty big on self-strength, health, and fulfillment being our ticket to loving others. Nicey vice versa. So don't forget your daily construction of personal power and love. Only then will the whole world smile with you. Returning to my idea that AA and rehab spend most of their time and yours far afield from the $64,000 question, exactly how to fight off our last-minute psychological rush towards relapse, which will threaten despite their 100 other brain-cleansing disciplines. For the most part, I've seemed to deny that anyone but rational recovery and yours truly can help arm you against relapse. Are you wondering, am I a dishonest huckster or just dense? You may be one of the millions who have been critically strengthened by many of those 100 topics for boosting emotional, behavioral, psychological, and spiritual maturity, each devastated by years of drug beastliness, in some virtually infantile reversion helping drive active addiction and ensuring relapse unless replaced with adult growth. Your rehab and AA benefits may be learning from experts' dissection of our incredibly similar histories of disastrous addictive behavior. Have they not helped you to rebuild a strong, safe, effective, and at least moderately serene life with healthy, kind relationships? And will you not end up in 1,000 times better shape to fight and win those by-brain battles I'm so hep on? I'm not gonna reach higher, or you either, till we hop up on the shoulders of the long-accomplished recovery community of teachers and students. But beautiful bodies work out daily. Beautiful minds with the bad gene need a little flexing of addictive voice recognition and defeat training daily. Concerning the relapse prevention research I and some of you will conduct, the Ultimate Science Pro would divert some of you to a control group in which you could pursue discipline, faith, good works, and psychological, not action-oriented rehab therapy till the cows come home, but you would be directed away from daily rehearsal of relapse desires and lies you then overmaster with your most powerful past, present, and future sobriety arguments, truly learning your lessons, so to speak. Ethics, however, preclude me from forming any such comparison group equivalent to classic American rehab and AA because someday, for most of you, at the moment of truth or terrible consequences, truth would be taking a coffee break. You'd be left in silence, terror, but resignation, frozen like a deer in the headlights. Now, you alert listeners are getting put out and off by all my whining about the masses AA and associated clinics don't save. It's like I'm yelling, "How dare you keep millions alive while I can't prove a single save?" But wait till our research comes in, kiddies. Fact is, every person who speaks at AA or rehab classes relates another chapter in their story of amazing change inspired by abstinence, and sometimes recalls their desperate emotional, spiritual, and intellectual conviction in the darkest day of their bottom that they would not die, but instead find a way up and out of their trap. Every idea I hear helps build their new world and mine from our inside out, allowing us less and less impulse to drug, and giving us more and more reason and power, not just God's, but ours, to resist relapse with creative new psychological and behavioral strategies from a dozen different recovery thinkers and doers each hour. So the grand battle I imagined designing was almost entirely your gift to me, granted and aided by the God of love and wisdom all along. Rather than criticize, I should admire and learn from you who give to and receive from God so much more than I. All this immensely valuable, loving consultation among our wounded but miraculously healing flock directly reduces our bursts of temptation from once an hour to once a day, week, or even month, and places us at way greater advantage for the sudden battles we'll always fight and must always win. While in my final rehab, I realized that I had rejected real 12-step work, probably due mostly to devious laziness more than reluctance to give it up to God. I had spent a few years pretending recovery to game authorities who expected me to clean up behind the wheel and around the clock. Of course, I failed. Facing jail, I realized that freedom was more fun than drinking, and both together were forever unavailable. My freedom and my nursing license were recently continued by my series of lies. So my 1,000-mile journey's first step was to start telling the truth to my legal and nursing supervisors. I didn't complete the 12 steps under just religious instruction, and I wrote down a mostly solitary man's history of abusing himself, not just others. During that rehab, I thought about the God I could get to know, the human love inspiring, not so magical and almighty character. I figured out who my demons were, the notes and melodies of their music, and the wording and strategy of their lies. I decided what kind of love and future I need to work for, and word for word my strongest truths that utterly, directly, exactly squashed that dingbat drunken devil every time. My writing talking, and even dreaming point in rehab was love. All I could find in me, God, and others to act on. I found that intense daily work on love flooded me with heavenly feelings. Sunshine, breezes, whispering, fluttering leaves in the trees. Mercy, joy, quiet pride, flowing hope and confidence, soaring years into my future. Like some choir was humming softly from all over the universe, singing love with energy and persistence, and you'll get it back 1,000-fold. And then God, heaven, ecstasy, or someone wrapped me in a monster, timeless hug and said, "You'll never stop loving, boy, 'cause you're hooked on my sweet return. And never forget how you get it. No drugs, work, and love, sweet love. The natural endorphins alone will keep you drunk as a skunk." Sure enough, Julie. Ain't that right, Rainbow? Yes, we can, Joanne. Love your voice, Joyce. My teachers. Each chapter of the Book of Recovery we're reading together empowers my story and yours of courage, wise, positive action, and redemption. Yet, will you, like most, sooner or later plunge from your high cliffside trail, ending the lovely adventure of your arduous, unfinished journey? For the simple failure to practice your balance and footing for those slippery overhangs. As to why 5 minutes of daily self-healing will work where hours of manipulating by various authorities usually won't, it's your brain that only you can work on, change, and rebuild. So while generic spiritual and psych counseling gives you roadmaps for actually keeping you out of the ditch, they don't have a clue. Compare typical addiction therapy to our medical institution's approach to heart disease and the other blood vessel, diet, smoking, and couch potato diseases. We passively sit buying cholesterol drugs, stents, bypasses, and insulin, averaging similar catastrophic relapse and death rates as fancy external addiction care. By contrast, millions of proactive, personal thought and behavior changers cure themselves with low-fat and calorie diets, exercise, and fresh, not smoke-filled air. They teach their own brains what drugs and surgeons cannot, to choose and think and act for love and health, to overmaster their fast food, slow movement, and toxic addictions. They can't fix you, but you can. As for the millions who accomplish long times and travels in sobriety, some devoting many careers to all that intricate reform, a large percentage still relapse in one fast, mysterious, silent flash. 1,000 books elaborate on the long, slow degeneration of the pre-relapse before the actual drugging. Full of warning signs, but universally neglected, is our last-second internal dialogue that actually, finally crushes our higher mind, directing the fingers to pick up the glass, powder, pill, or syringe. nor are we guided to each day build our power and strategy for always pulling the one lever in our cerebral train yard that switches the track from collision to safety, from death to life. Work on that for just a few measly minutes every 24 hours, and you will not ever spend the rest of any day, month, or year stumbling and staggering, consciously or otherwise, towards relapse. The terrible times of relapse and re-addiction, a few statistics are illuminating. Of America's 20 million addicts, only 2.5 million get treatment. And almost every recovery pro claims that they are the smart and fortunate, the successfully recovering ones. It is neither their passion nor business to admit that 70% of people who permanently recover do it 100% on their own, without a lick of medical or religious supervision. Of all addicts who dry out for 1 year, 80% relapse. 2 years abstinence, 60% still crack up. But managed 3 years, and 60% of us are heaven-bound, never to touch another poison. And a 5-year recovery rate is golden for 85%. So there you have it. 100 cute therapies aside, pure power to keep your hands to yourself. Year by year is how it's done. Back to my suggestion that we branch out beyond Bible and Biggie. You'll find that 2 ideas from your peers and 2 from another book equal 4 of your very own unique new revelations. And trust your own reasoning more than authorities who pigeonhole you with assumptions, not facts. For example, Dr. Albert Ellis, a huge contributor to the brilliant Rational Recovery Addictive Voice Recognition Training concepts, nevertheless occasionally engaged mouth or ink pen before brain. And I quote, "Most alcoholics are basically anxious, depressed, enraged, or self-hating. Why? Because they are easily, naturally that way." Shocking genetics report, Doc. Didn't mention any evidence. He goes on, "They wrongly think that they must do well, have to be approved of, and must always be treated fairly and nicely by others." This alcoholic personality mythology, disproved by every research study for 50 years, further inspired the doctor to repeat the popular notion that addicts drug to anesthetize their inborn silliness and distress. Born crazy, we can learn sanity from the wisest of therapists, of course. This very similar to AA's requirement that we pray away our original sin to become pure and sober. Dr. Ellis did learn and relate very insightful things about addicts' problems, needs, and weaknesses after being chemically, mentally, and behaviorally twisted by toxic ingestion, driven by the known genetically weak dopamine pump, heightening our stimulus to a self-drug cycle. Somewhat new research the old fuddy-duddy apparently never saw. Most addicts have an abnormally low dopamine response to intoxicating chemicals, skyrocketing our compulsion to continue. Environmental stimuli to drug use, most potent and long-lasting with we genetically susceptible, of course, include crappy schools, bad parenting, and neighborhoods full of pushers, the 2-job suburban rat race, or ghetto moms without daddy around. Precisely the 60-plus years of American degeneration paralleling our relentless rise in young addicts. Vast new legal drug use fuels millions more addicts, too. Other than neurotransmitter response, I'm unaware of any evidence that addicts come from defective emotional genetic stock. Anxiety, depression, anger, and self-loathing are the effects we see in the chronically drugged and then mentally ill, and are clearly stimulus to continue drowning our new sorrows, but are not universal or frequent original causes of drug addiction. A zillion normal, cheerful youngsters try drugs for curiosity, amusement, and because stuffy oldsters said, "Don't." 85 to 90% horse around with them and then mature. 10 to 15% get catastrophically hooked, mostly due to genetic susceptibility. Plus an added population of genetically more normal who still got hooked on one of the world's most addictive drugs, including heroin, nicotine, cocaine, and methamphetamine. Often ignoring these basic facts, many addiction therapists and faith healers are too distracted by income or spiritual passion to keep it real. The American alliance between these two at least partly irrational recovery teacher groups helps to explain our mounting holocaust of treatment failure. Neither truly puts your mind and reality to work to help you cure you. Treatments, I say this because our $64,000 question, how to say no, seldom gets a minute an hour. We're too busy perfecting our 100 other arenas of superior human being. We're training saints vulnerable to relapse. Instead, let's cultivate third-rate bozos who keep nailing one job only. We are going to be clean for life. Treatments for real, often congenital mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia, and environmental maladies such as PTSD are critical before and after final achievement of addictive drug abstinence. Then most all of us can achieve our maximum measure of stability and happiness until unpreventable external attack or disaster anyway. You never were an original sinner or alcoholic personality. Review my How to Save the World videos. For 99.5% of human prehistory, war and major violent crime did not exist. So even genetically vicious sociopaths were not more than an infinitesimally tiny minority. Universal original sin is a myth, handy as a requirement that we all pursue religious redemption. You are fundamentally, and without active addiction or a vicious socio-political military environment, a good, benevolent person. Stay with your program of health, sanity, and love, and you will suffer for life with an embarrassing abnormality. The giggles. You want a psychological strategy to ace recovery for life? Get inspired by the 5-year winners who are nearly 90% to heaven. You do that most difficult first year and pick up AA's 1-year chip to prove it. In Arizona, one old farmer had been ignoring AA for 32 years after stopping booze, except he walks in once a year and says, "Give me another year, Chip." Your second year isn't easy either, because it takes 2 full years on average to recover your full measure of emotional integrity and stability. And because so many of us find amazing ideas for emotional growth from other recoveries, your smart move is periodic visits to AA. At 2 years, you're using one form or another of daily sobriety self-messaging, not just somebody else's therapeutic routine. And you realize something very simple about years 3, 4, and 5. As sure as you are about recovery style and technique, you're even more determined 1,000% to not touch drugs, period, regardless of any other failure or success. Do 5, I'm alive. Double that a few more times, science makes us immortal, and you get bored. Your beast croons, "So have a drink, darling." You are never safe, so don't be sorry. Do your daily exercise. By far the highest documented recovery method success is RR's 70%. Throw in some AA, add learning of your choice, eat right, train heart, lungs, and muscles, which will thank you with natural chemical joy, and join my little study. There's your other 30% to nail one lifetime, drug-free. Now, what's the secret every successful recovery design shares? Intelligent, positive, pugnacious persistence. The exact definition of health, active love, and happy advancing life. How many of you have a week, month, or year of amazing abstinence under your belts? How many are still suffering, but are deeply evaluating the mounting harm of a present drug habit? Are you also lifting desire and a plan for permanent, not temporary recovery? Stopping for good? All of us, wasted as we speak or 10 years spotless, will tangle with our beast of compulsion another 1,000 times. In the majors, a 400 hitter gets a $100 million contract. In our league, a 990 hitter usually goes straight to hell before dying early and alone. That one deadly moment, worse than 100 other brain farts when 80% of us throw away our sobriety and lives. That 1% of battles we lose is indeed the number one we fail to look out for. We addicts are like the Dutch, who long ago labored to build a giant wall to rescue their farms and villages slowly sinking beneath the icy North Sea. Once upon a time, deep in a savage winter night, a lost, frightened little boy crept along its shadowy bulk, only to be suddenly drenched by a small but powerful jet of salt water, tiny cracks beginning to appear around the treacherous leak. They only found him many hours later, ashen and trembling in the frigid dawn, desperately huddled against the mammoth dike, his tiny, frozen finger thrust deep into the wall. We too are building with great labor a magnificent wall against our ocean of addiction. But now we must also target its 1%, but still fatal defect with our slender little daily disciplines stopgap. This talk is my work. I'm a trainer of bodies, a thinker, a recovering addict, and a nurse who teaches self-care. With much help, I've designed, described, and teach your exercises to replace insanity with new wisdom to take good care of yourself.